Google Calendar has been a lifesaver. I can't believe I've never. Yeah. Yeah. I was like, it's been notification of COVID. What time was it?
Kim Lab on Tuesdays in it too.
Oh, but the one where you repeat. Yeah.
Howdy. You only have to listen to see that like one more time before I'm booted out of office. So you're gonna miss it?
Yes.
Feels pitiful. Okay, well, at least I said like, nah, get out of here. Stop. All right. So if you have not yet, go ahead and make sure you sign in. I know we're gonna have a bunch of QR codes tonight. We're just getting a bunch of different info that's happening with events coming up, as well as keeping track of like active members and stuff, so we can provide the best service for you all. So that is why the army of QR codes every single time comes into one of our events.
By the way, most of the QR codes that are in the rest of the presentation, the links are on our link tree as well. So.
Yes. If you do miss it, don't stress. We'll have other ways to get it over to you. Cool. All right, so agenda. Hello, one item check off. We have quite a few updates and stuff coming on, and the local Steve Riley is gonna give us some really cool information, and I'm very excited about it. I hope y'all are too. And then we'll have some time at the very end for questions for either Mr. Riley or for the leadership team as per usual.
Okay, so I thought I would. Okay, I wanted to give a bit of an update on some design teams. One of the highlights of the work that they've been doing. We have 6 teams of 6 competing in NASA MIDIC, which is essentially taking a NASA patent, finding a commercial application for it, and pitching that at NASA JC. And so we have teams working on creating a search and rescue UAV using a panel D ray. We have people using resin transfer molding for, I think it's a aircraft part. Have a team working on fire sprinklers using shape memory alloys. There's a team working on water treatment systems, so like rigging everything somehow involving atmospheric water generators, I think. There's one team working on electromagnetic tissue repair sleeves. And the last team is working on a medical application for mobile. Sure. So some of you all might remember from last semester we had a space networking fair. Essentially, it'll just be like an opportunity for you to connect with space-related research labs and student boards. We had a great time last time, so you can join us again on March 30th, 1 to 4 p.m. Location.
So we did have a volunteer opportunity come up to be part of the K-8 STEAM Festival. It is the International International Leadership College Station. It's, I think, like a charter school or something like that. But if you are interested in doing something on that day, they are looking for help to run booths and interact with kiddos and just I'm excited about all things STEAM. So if you'd like more information about that after the meeting, you can come talk to any of us about volunteering. All right. So much like we had an eclipse in the same time we had a space networking fair last semester, we have another eclipse at the beginning of April. We are limiting this to those that like want to go with our group as SEDS. You do have to be a dues paying member. That's just to make sure that if we want to do things like provide breakfast or pay for gas or different things like that, we have the funds coming in to be able to do that for y'all. We also do want y'all to purchase tickets for the events, and there is a link to that particular event page on the interest form. It's being put on by the Law Observatory and I think Baylor University and a few other schools. We're basically going to be taking over McLean Stadium, and they're going to have different presentations, different events. There might be food choices and such there. You get the free flips classes, and you just will see the path to totality, which is going to be amazing. It is going to be an all-day event, and it is on a Monday. As far as I'm aware, A&M has not canceled classes, unlike most of the other schools in this area. So keep that in mind if you do choose to come. This is also a once in a lifetime event for Totality Path this close to us. So keep that in mind as well. What are you going to remember down the road? So given that your best judgment, we would love to see all of y'all come with us. All the information is there. Once you fill out that form and submit it, you are RSVPing that yes, you will be there. So if you do something like buy breakfast or get a rental vehicle to haul everybody there in one vehicle or anything like that, you're accounted for in that total. So no, thank you before you fill that out. Any questions on that in particular? It's kind of a big thing.
When is the interest form due? When is the interest form due?
I have to double check when SOFC requires travel form, but I'm going to try to push it as close to that date as possible. So somewhere towards the end of this month. So y'all do have time to think about it. You don't have to push into a decision. But once I get like that official date that I can't wait any longer before submitting travel information to the school, then that'll be our cutoff for that.
You'll need driver's agreements too from select people, right?
Depending on how the driving situation is, yeah.
Okay.
So that'll also depend on how many people are wanting to go. But if we do want volunteers for drivers, let us know. Any other questions? Anything more, you can always ask us after. All right, friendly reminder of dues and the cost. I even updated pretty pictures on the website. The website is the Flywire Tammy. You can Google search it, or it's also an interest form. But $40 a lifetime, especially if you're a freshman, great opportunity. You never have to pay dues again for this work. And then the other one's $15.25, 1 semester, 1 year, respectively. Let's have a works comp coming up. Adam, would you like to?
Yeah,
Okay.
so, I'll go ahead and go real quick.
Actually, I gotta pull.
Okay, yeah, so, we're running a design competition for new shirts. We've had these 4 shirts ever since I've been in the org. It's been 2 years, so time to get some, yeah, 3 or 4? Okay, well, time to breathe some new life into our t-shirts. So, you can submit your designs. Whoever wins gets, a free shirt. So, of their design. So, that's due March 18th, and then we're gonna have a period of voting where everybody in the org gets to vote on the new shirt design, and then we'll announce it at the general meeting in April. So,
Yeah. And don't be afraid if you're like, I can't draw up a design. You can like write a description and maybe come up with like a mock idea as well. So don't be limited by that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, just text prompt the AI like
Yeah.
that. And get a super awesome shirt.
Do as you wish. If it has hands and comes up like 6 or 8 fingers, I am good for it. AI hands are cool. The other exciting news that we've been working on for a while, officer applications. So thankfully, out of my amazing leadership team, we do have 3 people remaining in for the next year. The rest of us are stepping down for various reasons. So the open positions are treasurer. So if you like working with money or dealing with SFC, perfect one. You are like involved with everything, top level, all the paperwork and stuff. Outreach coordinator, you'll be running all of our different events. So Space Networking Fair or our outreach events. That's kind of the name. Design team coordinator, this is a brand new position that we're bringing back online. So like the MIDIC competition, those design teams, along with new design team or competition stuff that can come on down the line, that'll be all your department. You'll basically just be like, hey, your team's working. Yes. Okay. Coordinate that with or let the rest of the leadership team know. And then AAC director, this is restricted. You have to have been an active member in AAC for the past year.
Yeah, so the past year, yeah, sure.
So all of those, along with like the restrictions and stuff, are listed in that application. But if you want to, as of yet, another QR code you can scan and fill out. The deadline is April 5th, and then we'll start doing interviews and stuff for that process. So wish you the best luck and hope we have way more applicants than open positions, so we can get the best one to continue the amazing medicine this org has been able to flourish back into. So, all right. After a much long-winded
That was
introduction.
great. My turn. All right, awesome. Howdy, everybody.
Howdy.
Yeah.
Control.
We have volume.
We should.
Or just control from that one. All right. Awesome.
Honestly, that's not the one, so.
You all see that okay in the back? All right, awesome. Sweet. My little doohickeys working. Like y'all already know, I'm Steve Riley. I'm from the Johnson Space Center. I just drove up from Houston after a long work day and sat in almost 3 hours of traffic to be here. So, but I love A&M, and I was really pleasantly surprised to get the invite. So Johnson Space Center is actually not just Houston. It actually comprised of the White Sands Test Facility, which is in New Mexico, as well as Wellington Field, which is just a few miles away from the Johnson Space Center in Houston. But rather than me tell you about the Johnson Space Center, let's get the video to tell you.
It's the first word from space before history is made. From landing a man on the moon to assembling the International Space Station, NASA's Johnson Space Center serves as the iconic beginning to some of the greatest moments in American history. Moments that are triumphs of engineering and international cooperation. Today, we are leveraging our past successes to create even more daring missions from the moon. Made possible with the Orion and Gateway programs, which are both orchestrated out of Johnson, the desolate moon will serve as NASA's jump-off point as we journey to unlock the secrets of the universe and understand how it all began. Today, we push forward to the moon. Tomorrow, we leap to greater heights and new destinations. There is history to be made. In Mission Control, we eagerly anticipate the first transmissions from unexplored worlds. Giant leaps start here.
So just a quick little intro video there for you. For those who didn't know what Johnson does, there are like 17 NASA centers across the nation. And like I was talking to you right before we started, and there's really something for everybody who's involved in space, whether you're in engineering and science majors or not. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. So I'm going to segue just to talk about me and my background a little bit. So this is a very old picture of me that actually just got updated, but I haven't gotten the JPEGs yet. I was born in California, youngest of 5 kids. We moved to Houston when I was 4 years old in 1977. Because we were in Houston, I was very often at the Johnson Space Center because, you know, when anybody comes to visit, where are you going to take them? What is Houston known for? Oil and gas, right? So let's go see the oil rigs. No, said nobody ever. We want to go see NASA. And so we would go to the Johnson Space Center a lot. You know, for those who are from the Houston area, Cy-Fair, ISD schools out of the Cypress Creek. And I have a wide variety of interests: cars, scuba diving, computers, which were way different when I was your age, just like electronics and technology in general. And so I was trying to figure in all these other things. I was just trying to figure out, you know, what do I want to do? What do I want to do with my life? But, you know, it all came down to I'm kind of mechanically inclined. And so I went for, mechanical engineering, spoiler alert. Some old pictures, I'm actually the little one in these photos. And so, like I said, the early exposure to NASA and to the Johnson Space Center and to just spaceflight in general. And of course, every little kid wants to be an astronaut, right? And so that was kind of, in my brain from the very beginning. And then Texas A&M also, because my oldest sister actually went here. And so class of 95, mechanical engineering. Lots of involvement in high school, but like as I was saying, love of cars, love of space. I was like, mechanical engineering is going to be it. And went forward with A&M and involved in the sports car club, Formula SAE, and some design projects with Professor Berger, who's probably like long gone by now. That was what I did, and graduated in '96, Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering, and actually went straight from college to go work for a NASA contractor. And so right out of school, started in flight operations at NASA. And this is a very young version of me on console. Believe it or not, that is me. And I spent 14 years at what we call the Payload Deployment Retrieval Systems console, which is a fancy way of saying robotics. So it was the robot arm that has basically assembled the space station together. And I was robotics lead for 7 out of 34 missions that I worked as the space shuttle program marched through space station construction. And we had a little bit of downtime when there was the Columbia accident, and I worked the space station side of things quite a bit, doing robotics ground control. So like literally I would go to work and I would come home and it'd be like, what'd you do today? Oh, we reached out and grabbed a capsule and birthed it to the space station. No big deal. Pretty cool stuff, like operating space robots from a computer in mission control. Was pretty neat. And as I got more experience, I became the training coordinator, trying to help others to grow and to get into the right scheme of things at work so that they could be successful. I did that for 14 years, came up with the end of the shuttle program, and I had the opportunity to switch over and be the lead engineer over everything space station maintenance and repairs, as well as the berthing mechanism operations. And so these were our patches. The operations support officer, which is actually a console in mission control today. And then their training group, their sister group, the RAM group, which stands for repair mechanisms. Everything at NASA is an acronym. So if I mess up and forget to explain what an acronym is, just call me out on it. This was a really fun and challenging job because we didn't have access to space, that the United States didn't have human access to space for many, many years once the space shuttle retired. And so imagine trying to like repair your house or something on your house, and all you have are cargo flights or the Russians to launch people on the Soyuz spacecraft. And by the way, when we retired the space shuttle, the cost of a Soyuz seat went from 20 million a flight to 80 million a flight because they had a monopoly on it. A little bit more about that kind of stuff later. But anyway, that's about me. Back on just like NASA stuff in general. So you saw the Johnson Space Center video. For those, it's a small group. So am I talking to y'all about stuff you already know? Like, does anybody here not know that we've had a space station in space 24/7, 365 since November of 1998? Was anybody here alive in November 1998? 2 people. All right. Awesome. Yeah, so except for y'all 2, your entire lives, there has been components of the International Space Station in space. Okay, so who is younger than November 2nd of 2000? So a few more of you, all right. I'm honestly surprised because y'all did not look like you were 23 plus, but so November 2nd of 2000, that was the date when we had humans in space, and we have never not had humans in space since that date. So for half of y'all, for your entire lives, we have had human presence in space. I could not say that when I was your age. Like we would do a flight for a week or two and we'd come home and it'd be done. The Russians had a space station that they operated for probably close to 10 years, maybe 8 years. But that was like when I was in college, and that was kind of a new wild thing. And we were building ours, but it wasn't, wasn't launched or ready yet. So anyway, 270 people have been on board the space station, and actually that just increased yesterday morning by 4 because we had a launch this past weekend. So we actually have 11 people out on the International Space Station right now. The 4 new ones are getting a handover from the 4 old ones. So they're like talking to each other about how stuff really works. You got to jiggle the handle on the toilet to get it to flush, that sort of thing. The things that we don't necessarily teach them on the ground. We go around Earth 16 times every 24 hours. So a day in space is 90 minutes. You have a sunrise and a sunset every 90 minutes, which is pretty cool. You're going 17,500 miles an hour, but it also means your circadian rhythms are completely screwed up because you're seeing the sunrise and sunset 16 times a day. And so, that's fun. This is an actual photo of the space station that's taken from the space shuttle. So some of these facts I've already said. It is larger than a football field. And actually, I looked up the specs on Kyle Field. So let's just compare the size to Kyle Field for a minute, Chloe. Has anybody here not been to Kyle Field? Good answer. So from the width of the station, imagine goalpost to goalpost at Kyle Field. And that's how long it is, 360 feet from one end to the other along the axis of the truss. The width is wider than Kyle Field's football field is. From one set of arrays to the other set of arrays, 240 feet. Whereas a football field, I think, is 150 feet wide. So it's significantly wider than a football field. And then if you count where the crew lives, which are the modules here in the middle, from the front to the back, or from forward to aft, if that was standing on Kyle Field, it would be taller than Kyle, 170 feet from one end to the other. And that's all interconnected, pressurized volume. Y'all know house square footage? You have a 3,000 square foot house with 11-foot tall ceilings. Those are really tall ceilings. That's how much volume, pressurized volume there is on board the space station. It's rather large. It doesn't feel that large because more than half of that is actually taken up by stuff, by experiment racks and bedrooms and toilets and just parts. But it is a pretty enormous vehicle. Has anybody here ever looked at the space station with the naked eye as it goes and passes overhead? If y'all have not done that, that's a good field trip. The eclipse viewing is awesome, but to go outside like at dusk or dawn, and you can track this on the NASA app if you have it on your phone, and it'll actually alert you when passes are going to happen in your general area, and it's so wild to watch. Just a quick story about that. I was at a food event at the Houston Zoo many years ago, and I had my alert set, and it alerted me, and I was looking up in the sky, and I saw it going. And everybody around us who were in line were like, what are y'all looking at? Well, we're looking at the space station go overhead. And like half the people in line did not even know that we had a space station in space. So it was a really good educational moment for them. And we got, I got to talk about, what I like to talk about. Cornerstone of human space exploration, a true international partnership with 15 countries. The United States and Russia are the primary partners. 240, this is an old slide, sorry, from 19 countries. Those solar arrays that you see, an acre of solar panels. An acre is 44,000 square feet. So it's a large amount of power generation, and the station's completely green. There's no, there's no engines or motors or anything like that on board to generate power. It's all generated by the solar arrays and stored in batteries throughout the whole truss. We have done over 240 spacewalks, over 1,500 hours spent outside by the onboard crews to assemble it all together. And it weighs close to 1 million pounds. Astronauts. So besides you, who knew that we just graduated our latest class of Afghans yesterday? All right. So there was a big press event. It was in the news. national news was in my building. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. But yeah, we just graduated 12 new astronauts, and they put an application out for the new class. So if you meet the criteria, you can apply to be an astronaut. For most of y'all, probably not yet. But look at what that criteria is if you're interested, because it's pretty cool and it has changed a lot over the years. Higher education is almost mandatory, but you know, variety of experience and just the passion in what you do, the work that you do every day, go a really long way towards becoming an astronaut. I thought it was really cool that astronaut actually is space sailor in Greek. This is the current crew that's on board. So these are the core 7. 4 of those will be coming home because these 4 just launched. So they're doing direct handover, and 4 of the previous page crew, they'll be coming home on Monday. The crew on the left, they were part of the Axiom 3 mission, which was a private mission that SpaceX launched in concert with NASA, in full agreement with NASA. So that was a 21-day mission that was extended because of like weather reasons for landing. But you know, you don't even really have to be an astronaut. If you had, you know, a spare $25 million, you could pay them and you could launch to space too. Lots of crew flights going on. I only put crew flights on here. We have probably 4 times this many cargo missions that go to the vehicle on a yearly basis. So it's pretty cool, constant change outs. One thing to keep your eyes on, that April 26th Boeing flight, that's going to be a brand new space vehicle. It's never carried people before. And it's wonderful for us. It's, you know, it's not a NASA product. It is a Boeing product, but NASA is paying Boeing to provide that service, just like we pay SpaceX to provide service for the folks that just launched. SpaceX has been a great partner, but y'all know the whole, if you have just a single provider, your costs are going to go up. So like I mentioned about the cost of a Russian seat, we don't want SpaceX to be our sole provider, because then they could essentially charge us whatever they wanted. So a little, you know, American spirit, competition, and you hopefully save a little bit of money over the years. But we're real excited about the upcoming Boeing mission. Commercial crew. So that is what SpaceX and Boeing are both operating under. It's a bit larger than just the 2 of them, but you know, it's a great way for us to maintain the capability to get to low Earth orbit. NASA, that way NASA can focus on more far out missions. We have a new rocket that we've developed called the Space Launch System. It's rather huge and quite powerful. And that's what's taking our Artemis crew to the moon in the future and beyond. Speaking of which, so Earth missions, low Earth orbit, that's what LEO is. We have lots going on in low Earth orbit, but we are really trying to focus NASA's future attention on the moon, Mars, and beyond. And so you may have heard in the news, I think it was just last week, that there was a commercial company, Intuitive Machines, that launched a payload on the moon. That was like one step amongst many future steps to get human presence back on the moon. So, you know, getting commercial payloads back, contracting with Blue Origin and again SpaceX to get landers on the moon, so we'll launch humans at the very tip of SLS in an Orion vehicle, where they'll dock with the Gateway space station here, get into a commercial lunar lander, and go down to the lunar surface. And that next mission is about 1.5 years away. That's just going to go around the moon, but a year after that, we're planning to actually have boots on the surface. And this is all baby steps on the way to one day getting to Mars. So what y'all are doing today, for those of y'all who want to come work for NASA, this is what you're going to be doing. So what is it going to take to get humans onto the red planet? The Orion spacecraft I mentioned, we're going to be sending the first woman and next man to the moon in 2026. And then in cadre of flights after that, kind of on an annual basis. There's a whole mission template that's online. We already launched Artemis 1. It went for 25 days around the moon. This is one of the photos from the onboard cameras. That was an awesome mission for us. It gave us a lot of good data. We also uncovered some problems, like the heat shield. Not really well publicized. NASA's, I think, done a good job of keeping that quiet, so don't go to the news. But you know, the heat shield, we did a very interesting entry technique that was like a skip entry. And it actually stressed the heat shield in some interesting ways that we did not realize would happen. And so they're getting comfortable with how are we going to do these types of operations in the future and actually be successful with that. You know, the main thing is you want to make sure it's safe. You want to make sure your crew is going to get home safely. You know, that was a good test mission to fully test out those systems. Artemis 2 crew. So these are the next named crew and the only other Artemis crew that's been named. Artemis 3 has not been named yet. That's going to be the one that goes down to the lunar surface. This crew has some firsts with it. And let me just be direct, the 12 people who actually went to the surface of the moon in the 1970s, they were all white men. They were all Americans. So on this mission, we have a Canadian, Jeremy Hansen, and we have a Black man, and we have a woman. And so awesome crew. I know each one of them personally, and they are really amazing people, and NASA really knocked it out of the park on this crew selection. And so they're gonna test out all of Orion's systems for 10 days. 10-day mission on top of the SLS going around the moon, making sure that everything works just right. The really unfortunate thing for them is they are going to be stuck in a very small capsule together for 10 days. Whereas all of the future missions, there will be a purpose. It's going to be docking to another vehicle. It's going to be offloading some of the crew onto that vehicle and those crew going elsewhere. But these folks, they get to suffer through each other and all of the human element of space in a rather confined capsule for a 10-day mission. Just the kind of the Artemis blueprint from the Artemis 1 mission on the left, going forward to actually getting on the moon and eventually establishing that human presence with a surface habitat, rovers, all of that sort of thing on the lunar surface. It's 2024. This slide here is like all figure 2028 and beyond. So if you're getting a bachelor's degree and you're a freshman, you can come in and work and actually do some of these missions. The Gateway, that's the space station that's going to go around the moon. And we have a little video about that. Maybe.
NASA is going back to the moon. Joining forces with international and commercial partners, NASA is leading the partnership that's building and will operate Gateway, humanity's first space station in lunar orbit. Gateway, based at NASA's Johnson Space Center, with elements across the agency and around the world, will advance human exploration and further scientific research in deep space for the benefit of all humanity. Built with a minimum 15-year lifespan around the moon, Gateway will be an essential element of the long-term Artemis missions and the stepping stone to Mars. But we're not doing it alone. For more than 40 years, NASA has partnered with space agencies around the world to conduct meaningful research on the space shuttle, as well as build and operate the International Space Station. And today, we're expanding those relationships. NASA has once again teamed up with our international and commercial partners to build humanity's next orbital outpost. And all this is happening right now. The modules that will enable these new lunar discoveries are being manufactured in the United States and around the world today. With Gateway, we're going back to the moon and looking forward to Mars.
So that was actually Holly Ridings, the Gateway program manager. Aggie, class of 96, mechanical engineer. She's now like the head of the Gateway program. So pretty cool. I actually attended classes with her. She's done part of them than I have. So at the Johnson Space Center, so kind of stepping out of the human spaceflight piece, we have a whole ton of facilities that actually support all of our work. I'll tell you a little bit more about the Space Google Mockup facility. That's the facility that I run. But microbiology labs, the Mission Control Center that everybody knows, that's why we said Houston from the moon when we sat down was because all of the flight controllers work in mission control. The Neutral Buoyancy Lab, which is in Houston out at Ellington Field, that's North America's largest pool. It's 101 feet wide, 201 feet long, and 40 feet deep. Has over 6 million gallons of water in it, and full-size modules at the space station that are inside. It's pretty cool. All of the old lunar samples were processed in Houston at the Lunar Sample Lab. You may have heard stories about an intern who actually stole one and was subsequently arrested in prison. We do process all of those. Brand new facility is in work. It's being built right across from my building right now, and that's going to be for all the future lunar samples that we're going to be getting with the new program. And then the Space Food Lab, which is kind of funny, but Johnson is the home of human spaceflight, right? And so we have to feed our people when they're in space. And the food lab actually has a quite thankless job because you have to you have kind of diametrically opposed requirements of trying to make things as small and light as possible, but they still need to be flavorful enough for the crew to want to eat. And so sometimes that just doesn't work right. But it's really cool. They actually have food tasting. So as an employee, Adam, did you ever do that? When you were an employee, you got to go to the food lab and actually taste and rate their food?
I was actually at the Marshall.
You were at Marshall. Okay, gotcha. Gotcha. Anyway, that's pretty neat stuff that we do. The Space People Mockup facility. So back on me for a moment in my career. So I worked on the OSU and RAM team for a number of years, and then I got the opportunity in 2015 to come over and run this facility. And so what you see are mock-ups of the crew modules of the space station, just the modules where the crew live and work. And we really care about what's on the inside. So some of these don't look like much from the outside, and they might look even different from each other as you go. Each one was kind of constructed by a different company, and but we didn't really care much about what was on the outside. We really care about what's on the inside. And so I became deputy chief 8 years ago. I'm actually acting chief of this facility right now, going through a competitive selection process. So I'll let you know soon whether I'm chief or not. And then we do a whole bunch of stuff here in this building. So it's not just about training. Like training is what is the visible thing. Yes, astronauts come and they train here in the mock-ups to figure out how to go live and work in space. But really, it's engineering projects. It's a lot of project management. So it's some of the things that you guys probably will do later on in your, sorry about that, later on in your education, where when you're doing like senior level projects and you have a problem that you're trying to solve and bring to a company or an organization. This is the sort of thing that we do kind of on the daily. So I have a multi-million-dollar project or multi-million-dollar budget to go off and work on projects every year. We do deal with a lot of numbers. So you called for treasurer help. Like that kind of thing. Let me tell you, government budgets are kind of screwed up. And I don't mean just because it's government. I mean, like you have a color of money is what we call it, because Congress will allocate you funds to do a certain thing. And you have to spend that money only on that thing. And so I have about literally 30 different budgetary line items of income, if you want to call it that, coming in for what I need to spend money on. And so a simple job like treasurer actually goes a long way on a resume for things like this. Because if you have exposure to financial management, even beyond that level of your own personal financial management, it's kind of a rare thing. And so anyway, that sort of thing can be very helpful. Outreach, we do a lot of outreach. You can see on the patch the primary things we do: training, evaluations, mission support. If there was one other thing that we did, it would be outreach. We constantly have special guests in the building. Everybody wants to see where astronauts train. And so, just this year, Tom Hanks has been in the building. He did an interview with the Artemis crew, but he wanted a tour of the space station elements. So I got to tour Tom Hanks. Any of y'all watch NBC News? Tom Costello, who's one of the correspondents on NBC National News, was just in the building yesterday. It's constant. And it's funny, you get kind of numb to it over time. I'll have some pictures here in a second. And then the last thing, continuous improvement. And so that's kind of, that's my mantra. Is how can we make it better? And then when we make it better, how can we make it better again? And that's oftentimes at odds with the government budget, where we have very limited funds. Think about it this way. Anybody know how much the space station costs to build and launch into space? Throw out a number. 1 billion. Do I hear less or more than 1 billion?
1 trillion.
1 trillion. Wow.
100.
100 million?
30
40 billion. Any
30
other
billion?
takers?
60 billion.
60 billion. Okay, let's see who got close without going over. You get a sticker. $100 billion is the accepted number. It's really truly more than that. Just when you consider the people and the ongoing operations, probably more like 150 billion. But my annual budget to operate and do engineering for that building of all of the mock-ups that the crew train in is $7 million. So when you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar space station, I'm essentially, my long-term budget is 1/1000th of that of the flight vehicle. So how do you do engineering projects when you can spend 1/1000th of what that thing really costs? That becomes a real challenge. And so it's how can you be good stewards of the taxpayer's dollar and stretch your dollar really far? One of the things that we do a lot of now, simply, we have a part that has a drawing. We import the drawing into our 3D printer. We print out the part in plastic. If it doesn't need to be an operable part, I can print out a $50,000 part for about 50 bucks. So again, good stewards of the taxpayer's dollar. Some pictures from the mock-ups. So this was a previous version of the Orion mock-up. It now looks a little bit different with like silver all around it. You can see some of the seats that are in there, but that is the size. It's hard to tell, but imagine one person right there. That's going to hold those 4 crew for 10 days, only in that vehicle. You saw kind of this picture already, all of the mock-ups in a line for the space station. And then on the far end, the space shuttle just left, but one piece of space station truss, and then some other Artemis projects on the far end. There's a crew member doing training. So we've got racks that are inside the space station modules. And this is an actual toolbox, just like we have on board space station. So a huge amount of tools just to keep it running. I mean, you've got to have everything you need on board because you can't just like run to Home Depot if something breaks. So a whole host of tools and parts that are online, and we train the crews in how to fix things. We also react, that top right picture, we also react to failures that happen in real time. So if anything goes wrong with the onboard vehicle and we don't have like a canned fix for it, we actually get a real-time mission support team into the building, get into the mock-ups and actually figure out how are we going to teach the crew remotely how to fix this. And so we'll do what we call just-in-time training videos. Essentially, like, hey, here on Earth, my dishwasher broke. I can YouTube a video and I can watch a quick tutorial on how do I fix this part? What do I have to take off and what screws do I have to remove and all of that to get to the piece and then put it all back together. And, that has really revolutionized like, do-it-yourself repairs and things as opposed to pre-internet when I was your age. But, we don't have a lot of that for all of our space stuff. So we have to create it kind of in real time. It's kind of neat process to watch. And then this is along the outreach piece. Does anybody know who the man sitting down is?
George Bush.
George Bush, President Bush. Yeah, so that was several years ago before he passed. So that is under the outreach umbrella. All right, so and we'll have time for questions, and I'm happy to stay as long as y'all have questions for. Some of our other focus areas, so a lot of autonomous systems, robotic systems, a lot of concentration on entry technology. I mentioned the heat shield stuff earlier. Human systems research, that's a lot of what is going on board the space station. The whole reason for the space station in the first place was to do scientific experiments, what we call payloads. And we do that in concert with universities and businesses and all sorts of things to essentially help human life by doing those experiments up in space. Environmental control and life support. Here, the toilets on board the space station recycle the urine. That saves us having to launch water. 1 pound of mass costs $10,000 to launch. So for every pound of water that we can save, it saves us $10,000. A gallon of water weighs about 7 or 8 pounds. So a gallon of water, if we can recycle it out of the urine, that's $80,000 worth of water. The more we can recycle, the more we don't have to launch. But then what happens with a mission like going to Mars? When you're departing the planet and there's no U-turn, there's no easy way to come home, something like a water recovery system becomes a critical part of your space equipment. And if that breaks on day 1, the crew is dead. Spacesuits, space radiation protection. Radiation is a much different environment away from low Earth orbit. And so that presents some interesting challenges. That was interesting. Following the room next door. Dust mitigation when we go to the moon, and especially when we go to Mars. So when we went to the moon the first time, the crew had the dust all over their suits. And of course they hop on board and there's gravity, right? And they take their spacesuits off and they go launch to go back up to the capsule. And after they hit 0 gravity, what happened to all the dust that was on their suit? It all started to raise off the floor. And guess what that dust has as part of its component? Glass. It's all very sharp, but it's like almost like glass-like. So imagine now you're like, oh, I've got to, worry about my breathing system. So we actually have some really interesting concepts where the outside of the suit never comes in contact with the interior of the vehicle. That's really important when we go to Mars. Because when we go to Mars one day, the environment of Mars, like the Martian dirt, destroys your thyroid. So we have to protect the crew, or launch a lot of thyroid medication. Advanced docking, multi-vehicle informatics, exploration class medical optimization, buzzwords, but you get it. All right, so interns. Promised you I was going to talk about internships and try to change your mind. Let me tell you what, we rely on our interns to get our work done. Our internships are real internships that produce real work that helps save the government money. Because for every intern we get in, I don't worry about having to hire somebody full-time and hire a more expensive engineer, if you will. So it's definitely a win-win because it's real work can get done. Y'all get real exposure to how we do things. The projects that we work, real engineering projects, the way that NASA project management works, et cetera. And you get to bring that back, helps you get through college easier, and then you have potentially a place for a full-time job when you graduate. So I have some spiels here. I'll go back to that slide with the links if you want to take a picture of it later. But what I mentioned to you all the different career paths that your internships can take you. Flight operations, that's where I work. And so that's again the mock-ups, the pool, mission control, astronaut training, astronaut support. But there's lots of other areas at the Johnson Space Center, engineering. So it's truly like creating these longer term vehicles, the robots, humanoid robots that will help be an astronaut helper on the surface of the moon or Mars one day. Science, just in general science, whether it's rocket science or planetary science or human science. Lots of other research and exploration type activities. They're literally anything within the space umbrella we have, including business. So if you're not an engineer, if you're not into science, if that's all foreign to you, but you're a business major and you just happen to like space, guess what? If you're in procurement or finance or legal or any of these things, we have needs for that. And so you might not be directly designing like the space vehicle that's going to take a human to planetary surface one day, but you can certainly help support them by hiring or by purchasing items that the engineers need. All of that sort of. Anyway, so that's my sales pitch. If you like NASA, there's lots of opportunities. We have one program that's called Pathways. Were you Pathways, Adam? You were your regular intern? Okay, so it's so confusing. It drives me a little bit crazy. Pathways is kind of a keyword. When I sent Adam the job postings from last week, Pathways is very special within NASA because it is our way of providing a minimum of 3 internship tours, what we call, think 3 semesters of experience to you as a student over the course of your educational career. And in return, at the end of your Pathways internships, with y'all doing a good job and with the proper funding from Congress, we hire full-time. We hire about 95% of our Pathways interns when they graduate. So what am I trying to say? This is a great way to get your foot in the door for a literal government job, doing all of the cool things that I just talked about. And you can get in here as early as a sophomore, or looking at a different way, if you have 30 credit hours. So we start to consider candidates when they have 30 credit hours under their belt. How many of y'all graduated high school with close to 30 credit hours, right? And so we literally have like people who have been in college for 1 semester apply and are successful at becoming a Pathways intern as a freshman on paper, but as a sophomore by semester hours. So again, what I just said was pretty much the words on the page. You have mentors who work with you as an intern, who work and help you accomplish your projects. It's all very team oriented. And so it's not like you're just going to be stuck in a room all alone to figure it out for yourself. And actually might be a little bit jealous of the Pathways because they get some really cool opportunities that we as full-time employees don't get. Like special lectures, like Gene Cran's coming to talk to all of the Pathways interns. Movie night in Mission Control watching Apollo 13. All kinds of exposure to astronauts and managers of historical significance all across NASA. You also get the opportunity to not just work in the same place for those 3 tours. It's the expectation that you will come in and do 3 completely different tours. Tours is what we call, your version of a semester. And so you're going to come in and you're going to do engineering 1 tour, and you're going to do flight operations on 1 tour, and maybe another tour you're going to go do space and life sciences or something like that. Just completely different exposure, and that gives you the information you need to decide where is it that I want to work full time. Like it's really hard when you're in college and you're like, what do I want to do with my life? Like where do I want to work? What do I want to accomplish as a full-time employee someday? And this Pathways program, the way it's set up, allows y'all a little bit of a taste in some completely different areas to be able to make a much more informed decision. Who do we look for? We don't look for the folks who only have a 4.0 and nothing else. We actually want the well-rounded students, not just academics, but on campus and community involvement. Treasurer of SEDS, right? That looks great on a resume. I'm not kidding. Core foundation of logical reasoning. So if you can learn quickly, pay attention to detail, and you can communicate, those are all big pluses. Work well with teams. It's always the balance of finding the person who is that, strong leader, but also works really well on a team, and as a team can accomplish some really great things. And of course, the passion component. Unfortunately for NASA, for government employment, we are limited to U.S. citizens. So there are other opportunities if you're not a U.S. citizen where you can work for NASA contractors, and a lot of our contractors work side by side with us, and they are, it's rather badgeless. You know, we all have badges that we have to wear at work. The only difference between me and a contractor is the contractor has a green stripe on their badge. They get paid by somebody different. They might have different benefits and different insurance and all of that, but we work side by side to accomplish the same. So non-U.S. citizens, they can have the opportunity to go work for companies who are cleared. GPA wise, 2.9. 2.9 is the minimum. Of course, greater than a 2.9, that's great, but 2.9 meets the threshold. Again, 30 hours at a semester hour, or 45 quarter hours if you have friends who are in a college with quarter system. And then the university has to be accredited. It's got to be a bachelor's degree. It's typically got to be a degree in specific fields. And the information for that's in the job posting as far as what they're targeting. And then let me just talk for a minute about the 3 work tours, because I know when I was one of you, I was like, I can't get away from college for 3 work tours. Like, that's crazy. Look at it this way. Yes, your graduation would be delayed 1 year, maybe. If you go to summer school, might not. If you are, hey, I'm going to do my 8 semesters and I'm going to be done, which, you know, good luck, because it took me more than that. And that was I knew that first day because I looked at all the prerequisites for all the classes that I had to take. And I was like, there are 9 semesters worth of classes here. I cannot graduate in 8 semesters. So I knew right off the bat that I wouldn't be able to graduate, but I know that probably intimidates you all when you see this. But here's how it works. One of your work tours is either in the fall or the spring. That is a disruption to your normal academic routine. However, everyone after that can be a summer tour. So it doesn't have to be a fall or a spring unless you want it to. Sometimes people like doing that. The fall and the spring semester tours at NASA are longer. They are 16 to 18 week internships when it's a fall or spring, whereas the summer is only 10 or 12. And so summer, shorter internships, less exposure to all of the things that organization does. And a lot of people want, like, hey, you know what, I want to do the longer tour and I'm just going to do summer school instead. And some people don't even do summer school. They need the time off, they need the time away. And that's when your graduation does get extended a year. But it's very easy to work with our folks on planning it all out. And most universities, and Texas A&M is included in that, are very willing to work with interns and figuring out how that's going to work with your academic kind of plan. Okay. Connect with NASA via all these different ways. If you want to do a snapshot of that, or I'll rewind back to the other chart that I had as well. But we're everywhere online and out there. There is one more video here. Two more minutes, and then we're over.
Space exploration. Sail on this new cosmic sea. There's so much to know. There's so much to be excited about. American companies will soon land payloads on the moon for the first time. These missions are really challenging and risky. They're going to help us conduct new science.
Artemis is different from anything humanity has ever embarked on before. And we will discover life-saving, earth-changing science and technology.
We're delving deep into what science can be achieved by humans working together with robotic capabilities and future infrastructure to support a long-term human presence at the moon.
The main purpose of the International Space Station is to perform science.
The fact that we'll have two companies be able to provide the opportunity to reach low Earth orbit, but it'll change the way we look at how we fly to space.
The more we learn about the Earth, the more we understand the processes that affect it, the better we plan for the future.
The needle nose jet, the X-59, it will revolutionize the aviation industry. We will show what is possible when we dare to reach distant cosmic shores.
It's absolutely breathtaking.
Onward and up.
All right, that's all I have for you guys today. So questions? Yes.
You know Marie Sharp?
You know, it's funny. There's probably 10,000 people who work on site at the Johnson Space Center, and most of the time it's like, I don't know who that is, which is the case now. But occasionally it's like, yeah, they're in the office next door. So yeah, it's funny, but no, I don't know Marie Sharp.
Hi, so I actually applied to the most recent pathways
Awesome.
position.
Last week?
Yes,
Excellent.
but I was wondering, what other qualities would make somebody stand out as a candidate?
So here's the funny thing about pathways. Oh, here. Get a sticker for answering or for asking a question. This is my way to incentivize communication. Here's the funny thing about pathways. Here's the funny thing about government jobs in general. So when y'all are encouraged to apply for jobs, you do a one-pager resume, short and succinct, right? That's what you're kind of trained to do your whole life, right? That is not how the government works. Like as much information as possible. Like here, I just applied for my job. 5,000 character limit per job in the past, and trying to hit all of your duties and accomplishments and responsibilities, that's sometimes challenging to do in 5,000 characters. But when I print my resume out, it is 9 pages long. And so here's the thing, if you apply to pathways, and if you didn't do it this time, that's okay. Most people don't realize, be verbose, be descriptive, don't be short and succinct. Sometimes it's literally a few key words different between one candidate and the other getting chosen to be interviewed. We had, let's see, the last time I did interviews, I think we had 1,800 applicants. We chose 150 of those to digest their resumes and actually pick which 40 we were going to interview. So we went from 1,800 down to about 150 just to deep dive into their resume, and then chose 40 from there to interview. And let me tell you, that's hard because like it's that 41st person, they were so close. But it comes down to, you know, communicating of what your experiences, your strengths, your interests, your accomplishments, what jobs did you have? If you haven't worked, what projects have you managed? What student class accomplishments did you make? Be descriptive of all that stuff. Some people do really outside the box when they're applying as an intern. Like literally, I haven't had a job, but in my mechanical engineering class, we did this project, and here was my role, and here's how I helped my team be successful. So, does that help answer your question?
Yes.
All right, good. All right, who else? Yes, sir.
For the NASA Gateway program, what kind of research are y'all planning on doing with that station?
So it's mainly going to be lunar-based research. The interesting thing about Gateway, as opposed to the International Space Station, where we've been 24/7, 365, like I said, since November 2nd of 2000. Gateway, we're only going to be on for maybe 1 month a year. And Gateway is much smaller, and you don't get that in the video. But I have mock-ups of Gateway in my building. A space station mock-up is 15 feet around. Module is 15 feet around. That was the limiting design criteria because of the space shuttle's payload bay. Gateway is 10 feet around. So imagine, the ceiling's probably close to 10 feet. Imagine, a 10-foot circle. You're 6 feet tall. And so how do you work in that? You only have 2 feet this way, right? Harder to train in. The good news is in space, you can float and you're normally kind of like this instead of stretched out. And so you don't need quite as much space. But, if you consider the space station someone's home, Gateway is like the Winnebago. It's like the RV. It is the place where you can go and live in there, and you can be successful living in there for a few weeks or a month at a time. But it's not a place where you want to go live the remainder of your life unless you are, masochist. So as a result, Gateway, it's essentially just going to be, hey, I'm launching back up from the moon. I'm processing my lunar rocks through there. I'm fixing the Gateway systems that are on board to keep them running for the next mission that's coming, or I'm preparing for that next lunar lander that's going to be docking, that sort of thing. A lot less science on Gateway. What the purpose of that is just kind of be that central vehicle that everything comes to. And then when it's time to go home, you load everything into your Orion capsule and you bring it home with you. And then it gets all scientifically processed on the ground. Yes, sir.
Is there going to be a Gateway mock-up in like the neutral buoyancy lab at some point?
Yeah, so the neutral buoyancy lab is more focused on, good question. It's more focused on actually lunar lander operations. So boots on the surface, people in the suits walking on the lunar surface. There's not really a great ops concept, I'll say, for spacewalks around Gateway. They are developing the capability, and there will be an airlock for Gateway, but it has a much different, the whole ops concept for Gateway does not include spacewalks for anything except for contingencies. Whereas the space station, remember I mentioned over 240 spacewalks in my slides? The space station, it was created with the expectation that you're going to have to do spacewalks in order to put all these pieces together. And so every mission that we launched would come with 2 or 3 or 4 spacewalks as a component of that mission required in order for the mission to be successful. Whereas Gateway, we're only doing spacewalks if the mission is not successful. So it's contingency. We're going to train a lot of different components of it. A lot less reliance on the pool as a result of that. It's going to be more, there's I wish I had a picture of it. There's a computer controlled contraption that's kind of like, if you've ever seen like the rock concerts where like, I know Pink is one of them who's like puts the little harness on and floats through the air, and it's kind of like a system like that, except it's sensitive, it's touch sensitive. So like if you push off, the system is going to keep bringing you in the direction you pushed off in until an equal and opposite force were to stop you. And so it's that sort of technology that we're going to rely on more so than the pool in the future. Now we'll see when the space station gets retired if they convert that part of the pool. They very well may, or it might become a lunar surface habitat trainer of sorts. Okay, keep that in.
2 questions.
Yes.
One, when you put together a mission, have your personnel, how do you mitigate risk associated with the mission?
Oh, good question. We actually, that's something NASA's really good at. So we have an entire system. The acronym for it is RISCS, RISCS. I can't even remember what it stands for. You get to work there and you're like, you get to speak acronyms and you forget like what does that acronym mean? I can't remember, but this is what it does. And sometimes we just make up acronyms to fit what it is. But we have a whole internal risk system where we document, like these are the things that we are really worried about. We categorize those risks, and the ones that are, it's kind of like this 5x5 grid. So imagine like an Excel spreadsheet, 5 wide and 5 tall. And the one top right corner of it is all red. So these are the things that like, it's going to kill somebody if it happens, or it's going to be a loss of vehicle if it happens. sites.
That's
And
the
so
first
those are the
one.
ones that you really spend the time and money working on. The ones that are kind of in the middle band going across diagonally. Yeah, those are things you definitely want to do. The ones that are in the opposite corner in the lower left corner, those are green. Do we lose the room? I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Because we can go outside and finish the talk outside, right? But that's how we kind of categorize them, and then the program managers typically work with the engineering departments in order to reduce the risk of this. And so that's where we do spend